Hey everyone! Have you ever been in a situation where everything seems to be going wrong? Well, in today's lesson, we are going to learn some amazing English idioms which will exactly express just how much of trouble you really are in. Think of it as a trouble meter. So this trouble meter sort of describes your trouble from just a tiny bit all the way to complete disaster. And the best part is that these are idioms that all native English speakers use every single time. So let's dive in. However, I want you to stick to the end of the video because I have a challenge for you. Now, when you're starting to sense that you might get into some trouble, you can say, walking on thin ice. Now remember, you're not really in trouble, but you're starting to sense that something may potentially become quite problematic. So you can use this expression, walking on thin ice. As you can see, in this trouble meter, we are now inching towards trouble. And as we go further, it will keep adding to more trouble as we learn more expressions. All right, but let's look at an example to see how we can use walking on thin ice. After being late 3 times in a row, I'm starting to walk on thin ice with my boss. Now, if you are late several times, you are potentially seeking trouble, correct? You're not in trouble already, but you are walking on thin ice. Here's another one. Be careful what you say to mom right now. You're walking on thin ice. Well, if you have a very strict parent, you cannot talk back. You can't just say anything because certain things that you say might potentially get you in trouble. So be careful what you say because you are walking on thin ice. All right then, let's now increase our trouble meter a little bit more with our second expression, which is in a pickle. Well, you are in a pickle when you want to say that you are in a minor difficult situation. As you can see, our trouble meter is inching forward, but it is not really all the way to complete disaster. So it is a difficult situation, but a minor one. Let's have a look at how we can use in a pickle. I forgot my wallet at home. Now I'm in a pickle. Just imagine you are going somewhere and you don't have your wallet to pay money. Well, what's going to happen? You are going to be in trouble. So you are in a pickle. Here's another one. The car won't start and I have a meeting in 10 minutes. I'm in a real pickle. Well, all of you who drive to work, you know what I mean, right? If you can't get to work on time because of a car breakdown, you are in trouble. You are in a pickle. So let's increase our trouble meter now with our third idiom, which is in hot water. What does hot water mean? Well, hot water is being in trouble or facing punishment. So here the trouble is a lot higher because you are potentially going to be facing the consequences of what you've done. Let's see how we can use it. The students were in hot water after the principal caught them skipping class. So as you can see, they were going to face the consequences of their action. So they were in hot water. He's in hot water with his boss for missing the deadline twice. Now, if you're at work, you have to submit your assignments on time. You have to submit your projects on time. So if you don't do that, you are going to face consequences or you will face punishment. And that means you are going to be in hot water. All right, now we're going to increase our trouble meter a little bit more with this expression. And the expression is between a rock and a hard place. Now this is a very common native English expression when people want to describe that they are facing two difficult choices and they have to pick one. But you know what? neither of these choices are easy. So they are in trouble because both the choices are very hard to pick. All right, here's how we can use it. I either work overtime and miss my son's game, or I leave early from work and risk not being promoted. Well, I'm between a rock and a hard place. Okay, so as you can see, sometimes when you have to leave from work early, you can't do it because you might not get promoted because you're not working enough. But then again, if you don't leave work early, your family responsibilities are not going to be met. And that's when you have to make that difficult choice between two options which are not really ideal to choose from. That's when you are between a rock and a hard place. Here's another one. The company is between a rock and a hard place. Either cut their staff or go bankrupt. Most companies which are struggling definitely are in this situation where they have to cut staff or lose their money. Now, as you can see, we are getting into even more serious territory. So let's see what happens when things become really serious and quite complicated. Here's an expression you can use. Against the wall. Now, you use this expression against the wall when you want to say that you are facing extreme pressure with no easy way out. Most people, when they are in trouble, they look for solutions. But if you see no solution at hand, that's when you will say you are against the wall. Let's see how we can use it. The startup is against the wall with investors demanding results. Well, if it's a startup, you have to pay back your investors and show some results for the work that you've put in, right? But if you can't do that, you see no easy way out. And that's when you can say you're up against the wall. He's against the wall with trying to finish his thesis before funding runs out. Well, theses are funded by the university or by the government. And if you don't finish it on time, well, you're going to have to pay out-of-pocket expenses. And that's when you feel you are against the wall. Can you see? With every idiom, the intensity of trouble increases. The problems increase. And that's when we are going to now look at the next one, which is in over my head. Okay, now when something is over your head, what does it imply? It means that you are involved in something which is too difficult to handle. It's really not your thing. So let's see some really practical ways to use it. I took on this home renovation project and I'm unable to complete it. I'm really in over my head. Well, like I said, certain things you can't handle because you don't have the ability or the resources to do so. And a home renovation project could be one of them where you really feel you are in over your head. She's in over her head trying to manage 3 departments at once. Well, none of us are Superman or Superwoman. And when we have several things to do, we feel overwhelmed. We feel like we cannot handle it. Now, as you can see, our trouble meter is up to a 70%. That's a pretty high percentage of trouble. So, our next idiom would be out of the frying pan into the fire. Okay, so when you're saying this expression, which is quite dramatic, it basically implies that you have gone from a bad situation into an even worse one. Okay, which means you were already stuck with trouble and now something else has happened which is even worse. Okay, not a good place to be in, but here we are. I quit my stressful job only to find out that my new boss is even worse. Talk about out of the frying pan into the fire. Imagine you were in a job which was really stressful. That was a bad situation. But now your new job is even worse because you have a boss that is really terrible. So that's when you will say out of the frying pan into the fire. He left his strict parents to live in with his crazy girlfriend. Talk about out of the frying pan into the fire. Again, over here, he went from a bad situation into an even worse one. Well, this trouble meter is getting dangerously high now, and that is the reason we are going to talk about our next idiom, which is into the rabbit hole. If you've seen a rabbit hole, it is quite deep and dark, and that's why this next expression talks about getting increasingly in a complicated situation, a situation which is growing even more serious and even more complicated as the days go by. So here are some practical ways to use it. What started as a simple house repair has gone down that rabbit hole. Perhaps you wanted to just, fix your kitchen, but so many more expenses came up that you ended up spending way over your budget, maybe 10 times more than what your budget allowed. So the situation became more serious, more problematic, more complicated. So you went down the rabbit hole. She went down the rabbit hole trying to fix the software bug. Again, over here, she was trying to fix a problem. But what happened? The situation became increasingly more complicated, increasingly more difficult to solve. So she went down the rabbit hole. We are approaching very critical levels of trouble now, and that's why this next expression says, hitting rock bottom. Well, no one likes to be at the bottom. It talks about being really at a low level, and that's what this expression really means. It talks about reaching the lowest point in a situation. And that means you are in a whole lot of trouble, as our trouble meter indicates right here. So let's see how we can use it. After losing his house, his family, and his job, he hit rock bottom. I hope none of you have to ever say this, but a lot of people, unfortunately, have hit rock bottom. In other words, it is reaching the lowest point in a situation, which means a lot of trouble. The company hit rock bottom when they declared bankruptcy. Well, if your company is bankrupt, it just means that you cannot operate anymore, you cannot make profits anymore, and you have to declare insolvent, right? And that means you've hit rock bottom, the lowest situation. And finally, we've reached maximum trouble, all the way to complete disaster, when we can say dead in the water. Well, what can be worse than being dead, right? That is the highest amount of trouble, as you can see in the trouble meter. And when we use dead in the water, we are basically talking about being completely stuck with no hope of progress or success. Like I said, a lot of us, we all get into trouble. But as long as you can see hope, there is something you can do about it. But this level of trouble makes you see zero hope for progress or success. Without funding, our startup project was dead in the water. As you know, every business requires money to be pumped in for it to operate. But if you are in a startup project with no funding, well, you are dead in the water. Well, here's another one. The movie production was dead in the water after losing its main star. Well, your movie can never do well enough or can even have any chance of success if the main star is not available. And that's when you can use this particular idiom. All right then, now it's time to put what you've learned to the test. All right, so here's a challenge that I would like you to take up. Firstly, think about a difficult situation that you are currently going through or that you've gone through before. Once you do that, I would like you to assess how serious the situation is based on our trouble meter from a score of 0% to 100%. And then here's the most important part. I want you to choose the appropriate idiom that matches the kind of trouble you are in. Okay? And here is where you implement what you've learned. I want you to make 3 sentences with that idiom. and then choose the best sentence that you've made and put them and share them for everybody in the comments below. All right? This is a challenge which will help you use what you've learned and show that you have understood how to use these expressions which accurately describe how much of trouble you are in. Well, if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with your friends and family so that they can also keep learning just like you are. I'll be back with some more lessons, but do share with me in the comments about what more idiomatic themes you would like to learn about. This was trouble, but what other themes would you like to learn about? Do let me know in the comments. But keep learning, and I'll see you in our next lesson. Until then, this is me saying, keep practicing.